It's great to start the innovation session today at the Center for Energy Innovation's Industrial Separations Workshop. I'm going to hand this session over to Peter Fisk, who is the Executive Director of the National Alliance for Water Innovation.
So I'm told that the job of the session chair is to introduce people, but we also have a moderator who will introduce people. So rather than be redundant, I'll simply say that the first session was great because we got to see and hear sort of big industry war stories, separation war stories, where success means that you quietly make your shareholders quiet billions of dollars and live in anonymity in the fame of corporate America. We now turn our attention to lands of startups, where you are in the business of disrupting markets with innovative technologies and enabling the previously impossible or impenetrable. So with that, take it away.
Super. Well, thank you. So I'm Earl Jones. I'm the CEO of Heartland Water Technology. Heartland, we make a technology that uses renewable energy for evaporation, challenging industrial wastewaters. Jeff, Sean, team, thank you guys so much for the opportunity to be here and for such a wonderful job putting the panel together. It's great to see a lot of friendly faces. Many of us were together earlier this week. It's great to see a lot of new faces. And a lot of times I think we lose sight of how special it is when we come together like this. For me, it's just so energizing, and really for two reasons. I mean, just to be around each of you, folks who decided, first, you're so smart and decided to use your talent, your energy, your perspiration in small and large ways to just make the planet better than it was when we found it. That's really very energizing. And the other thing that really fires me up is the spirit of innovation that's in the room. You know, innovation is really, at its core, just a message of hope. Like in the darkest of times, we can see through innovation the opportunity to just work our way out of the problems that we're in. And I don't know if did Alex leave?
He might be over there.
Well, you'll just have to tell that I really blew smoke up his skirt today because I really enjoyed his presentation. And he did a really wonderful job. If someone had asked me this morning, hey, do you think there's enough innovation potential in ceramics to change the world? I would kind of scratch my head and go, I'm not sure. The message and that vision that he put together was really just a wonderful balance of aspirational hope and grounded engineering and science that I walked away just super hopeful that with teams like Fraunhofer and guys like Alex that we really can make the world a different place. We're now going to turn our discussion to water, and I think we know many of the water challenges that we're facing, with population growth and urbanization and population migration, climate change, contaminants, emerging concern. We can just go on. The problems are not getting any easier, and we're not going to have enough money or time to solve these problems with yesterday's technology. So we've got to be innovating in the water space. And there's good news here. The good news is, by any metric you want to look at, early innovation in water is vibrant. We're kicking out more PhDs and more folks are choosing their careers in the water space. We're seeing more startups going through incubators. We're seeing more money from governments and non-government organizations going into water. So that early innovation space is awesome. The challenge is getting that innovation to market, and I don't know that it's getting any easier. And what we have on our panel here are 6 companies who are just in the thick of the fight right now. I mean, they really are collectively trying to make a difference in the space, in the separation technology space. They're in the thick of it. And we met and chatted before today to just kind of get to know one another. And I think what you'll see is each individually and this group collectively really has a chance to make a difference if we can get the technology out there. And that's really what we're going to talk about today. So just one last comment, and then we'll do quick introductions. One of my good friends, Jim Matheson, who used to be the CEO at Oasis Water, said something that I think really, sort of encapsulates where this team is, and maybe it's a real good measure of any early innovation. He goes, Earl, I see the next 3 years clearly. It's the next 3 months that are completely opaque, right? And I think that's really what's going on with young companies. So I'm excited for the team here. We're going to kick through introductions. We're going to have a little bit of Q&A, and then hold your questions because we're going to get to you and before this is over so that you can talk. So with that, if we can start with Aquaporin. Please.
Hello everyone, my name is Michael and I'm here to represent Aquaporin. So at Aquaporin, what we do is basically in our name. We utilize aquaporin protein, which is nature's own water separation channel. So we produce these aquaporins and we integrate them into membranes, which is reverse osmosis and forward osmosis membranes. As you can see down there is that we have some vesicles that we embed into the selective layer, and that gives us a new tool to play around with membrane performance, whether it's permeability or rejection or a combination of both. So we're a Danish company, headquarters just north of Copenhagen. As you can see in the picture up on the left, this is our office space. This is 2/3. No, sorry, this is just 2/5 of the whole building. So we're really in the scale-up commercialization growth phase now in the company. We have office in Singapore and also representation here in the US. So we are just now at the border of really entering the market, and it's really exciting. But as you can see, for now, the products we have on the market is tap water hour membranes, and we are also heavily involved in making very novel forward osmosis membranes. Thank you.
Super. All right. Let's see if we can get out of this PowerPoint mode. We did rehearse this, by the way, before the panel started. I got it. Sorry. And then there were no glitches. Okay, Membrion?
Hello, everyone. My name is John Claus. I'm the chairman of Membrion. First of all, I am a non-technical person, so we can get to Q&A. Forgive me if I don't have the ability to answer your question. I'm here on behalf of the company. The CEO and founder is not available, so I'll muddle my way through. I was the CEO for about 2 years and then recently moved on for something else. But we're at 2016. In 2016, we spun out of the University of Washington. I met the company when I was an entrepreneur in residence with a very similar organization called the University of Washington Clean Energy Institute, or CEI. And I was a clean tech entrepreneur in residence and helped the founder spin the company out. I'm also happen to be the largest investor in the company, so I'm kind of all in on this. We make a very unique ceramic ion exchange membrane that the founder did as part of his PhD in chemical engineering. And I'd like to go into it more maybe in the Q&A to give you a little bit more definition of what it is. But it's an ion exchange membrane that was originally developed with funding from the NSF for flow batteries. So it's a ceramic membrane using a sol gel process that works really well in harsh chemical environments. We have 3 patents granted so far. The most recent just came in this week for composition of matter. So it's a very unique technology and a very unique approach. We've been sort of transitioning away from the flow battery industry for a couple reasons. One, the market pull on the water side has been much more significant. Same membrane, same manufacturing process. We found that focusing on the reject stream from RO is a very significant opportunity and a huge problem for society and for industry. There's some numbers up there on what that market looks like and what we think it can be. I'd love to get into the Q&A portion of this to discuss that. We do have commercial scale sales at this point. We have received our first purchase order, so we're selling products today. And we're pretty excited about the growth potential of our technology due to the price point. So we're using commodity scale materials today. Our pricing at our sort of small scale is significantly higher than price projections. It's about $35 per meter squared, which still makes us incredibly competitive against some of the more traditional polymer membranes. With scale, we think we can bring that down to $15 per meter squared, and that's based on significant analysis. One of the other things that we are really interested to talk about is using techno-economic models to justify why electrodialysis is a really unique approach to address brackish water and the removal of contaminants from reject water. We think it's a really interesting concept that we've spent a lot of time developing a techno-economic model. And with that, we've shown we can reduce CapEx significantly with our membrane costs in treating some of these solutions. And then obviously it's a huge market opportunity. So look forward to the Q&A.
Super. Well, whenever anyone says that they're not very technical, I always look out. He's really sharp when it comes to technology. So, Zwirko?
Sure. So my name is Chris Drover. I'm a co-founder and the CTO of Zwirko. Zwirko is probably one of the newer companies. You're young. I'm sorry? Do I not have this?
I'd be closer. Yeah, a little closer to the mic.
So my understanding, I think we're probably one of the youngest companies represented or founded just last May, and spun out of some technology from Tufts University. We're targeting BOD and fog removal in the broader food industry. This is a space that sees a lot of use of DAFs. And there's a couple of pressures that are making that harder and harder, and we can get into the arcane details of that later. The technology, as you might imagine from our name, is a zwitterionic copolymer. And we have scaled that up into a roll and are excited to start piloting that next year.
Super. All right, Aqua?
All right, so my name is Kendall Eggert. I'm here to represent Aqua Membranes. We're apparently a little different from most of the companies in this room in that we don't focus on membrane. What we focus on is these spacers that are used to roll spiral wound membrane elements. Our technology came out of a project that we did as a DARPA grant, a Defense Advanced Research grant, about 10 years ago. We found that there's a lot of inefficiencies in the way that membranes are actually operated due to their construction. And we found that if we could change the spacers that are used in them, we could make them much more efficient, much more effective. We found we could make the same element produce more water, which is actually where we started, trying to produce a man-portable desalinator, basically. We found that we could make them foul less, scale less, produce less pressure drops, so you save energy just by operating the membrane, as well as a number of other benefits, such as evening flux across the membrane sheet when it's rolled into an element. We're currently releasing our first products right now. We started to sort of target some markets that, could easily be, attacked, basically not attacked, but served, solve some problems that are, attack, basically going after things that couldn't possibly be done before. So what we did is develop an element that, without changing the membrane or changing anything about how you operate a system, produces more water in cold water. Which a lot of times you have a system that was designed for a specific temperature and anything like that, you end up with a situation where it can't produce the flow. So we went after that and said we could very easily produce an element that works in cold water. So yeah, looking forward to more questions.
Thank you. Okay, Via?
Good morning. So my name is Stephen Frayne, and I'm a chemist at VIA Separations. So VIA is developing NF membranes for various industrial chemical separations. So although we're working in aqueous environments, we're not doing water purification. So perhaps that's a little bit of a niche for us, maybe relative to some of the other companies up here. We spun out of MIT in 2017 with what was at the time our now CEO's graduate work. So we've grown since then to be a company of 8 people. We're in the process right now of hiring our 9th, and we also have a slew of co-op students that work with us for about 6 months at the time. I think earlier this year we closed our Series A round of funding, which is very fortunate for me because that allowed me to be hired. So I've been at VIA now for about just over 6 months, and yeah, looking forward to the Q&A.
Super, thank you. All right, and then Jaime.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. My name is Jaime Mateos. I'm one of the founders and the CEO at Enfiro. We are a membrane technology company working on self-assembling polymers. So we're making polymer-based membranes, but out of a new material that we've developed, working with block copolymers, which some of you may or may not be familiar with, but essentially pushing the boundaries of what can be done with those materials into significantly smaller pore sizes. We view this as a platform technology that can extend into a variety of membrane products. The near-term focus is on our tight UF membrane. We have development work ongoing with our NF membrane and ideas of how we can extend this technology in the future towards RO. The company itself was founded in 2014. It was mostly a university operation until 2017 when we closed our seed round. And we're at the stage we're at right now is we have some small spiral wound element prototypes that you can see on the pictures there. The image on the top right is what the surface of our membrane actually looks like when we talk about these uniform pores that are closely packed and kind of an organized nanoscale structure, a little bit different from most polymeric membranes. And we hope to be piloting our technology in full size in about a year.
Super. Well, I hope you sort of breathe that panel in and just get a sense of the potential that's sitting up here. But let's just dive right in. John, why don't you keep the mic? Just dive in and tell us, what's it like trying to commercialize technology and raise money and build a team in this space? What's your perspectives?
Extremely difficult. I don't think anyone starts a membrane materials technology company because it's easy. We do it because we believe it has the promise to have a very big impact. I think for us, fundraising has been a pretty big challenge. A lot of that is just due to timing and luck, but a lot of the typical VC world is not super excited about early stage materials that are pre-commercial. So we've had to get pretty creative. We've been very good at getting government grants. We've networked a lot with family offices, high net worth individuals, which are an unusual type of funding source for most startups. So it's that's been a challenge. I think the flip side of that, which is related to this, is that what we're doing requires large-scale manufacturing, and you can't develop the full-size membrane element unless you have the manufacturing equipment or the right manufacturing partner, and both of those paths take time and money, and it doesn't happen as fast as software or some other industries that a lot of investors are used to. So I could probably take the whole day talking about many other challenges, but I'll keep my comments at that for now.
Super. Hey, Mike, why don't you follow up on that same comment? You've been at this for a while. Give us some of your perspectives on bringing product to market.
Yeah, so first of all, we've done a lot of years researching. So we've been in the market or established for 14 years, but getting Aquaporin to be integrated into a membrane takes time. So we've took some years, but now we've solved it. And then, of course, then it's the whole scale-up phase to have the production capacity and the right people on board, and then entering the market. But it's sometimes going slower than expected, either because you have a membrane, but it needs to be integrated into a system. So you have one component of a larger system that solves an issue. So how to do that, that's what we're focusing on, teaming up with strong partners. We're going to stick to what we're good at. We're a biotech company. We make the Aquaporin inside formulation, and then we team up with strong partners and players with whom there's a good synergy between what they're doing and what we're doing. I think that's how we're approaching the whole scale-up and go-to-market. We're not trying to do everything ourselves, but really finding the right partners is one of the things that helps us.
How did you find investors to stick with you for 14 years?
So I haven't been involved for 14 years in the company, and I have also not been involved in the whole financing part of it. But when we talks with the management, what I can hear is that they have had to say no to the cash-only investors, and really vetting the investors that they're working with, who there's been an alignment on expectation. This is a long-term journey, but the potential in the future is also very high. And then on top of that is we are more maybe focusing on adding value to the existing industry, which means is that we're not trying to outcompete some of the big players. We're out there having a new tool for existing industry, and we have gotten a really good reception by the existing players in the market. So that's one of the ways we've been managed to keep going for so long. And we have investors that can see the technology working. They can see the benefit in the whole water sector, food and beverage, pharma, medical, space. So if you can have a technology that can add value to those big existing industries, then they also, you can say, patience, because they can see the long-term benefit.
To me, I thought that, we talked about this in preparation, but I thought that was sort of a brilliant perspective of how important it is to find the right investors who have the patience to stay with you, because it does take time, right? And Stephen, you guys just raised around. How long were you out raising? Tell us a little bit about how you were able to convince investors to join your journey.
Yeah, so I actually again was not a part of the Series A funding. It did go on for about 6 months, but I think, and this was mentioned by Membrion as well, something that we really leveraged was the techno-economic model. And so I think one of the biggest barriers for us, especially in communicating with potential industries but also investors, is communication. And the techno-economic model that we've used has kind of allowed us to speak their language, which is most often dollars. And so that's really been an invaluable resource for VIA.
Super. And then, so in addition to investors, stakeholders in this space include, right where we're sitting, include industrial partners, governments, academics. John, I think you've had some particular success in working on with the government to get funding. Why don't you tell us how the government has helped you in your journey?
Sure. So the original funding was a SBIR Phase 1 from NSF with a focus on developing a ion exchange membrane for flow batteries in a harsh chemical environment. We have found NSF to be a terrific organization that if you have sound science, a good idea, and most importantly, a really good writer, which the founder is a really good writer, they're exuberant in their interest to support technology development that meets the goals of the NSF. So we ran that successfully, accomplished the milestones ahead of schedule, submitted for a Phase 2. We were awarded $748,000. They knocked $1,800 off of our request. And we're very collaborative with us in recognizing that the flow battery industry, while it may be exciting, is a little bit challenging for flow battery companies and for a company like us to try to enter that market. And so they've really embraced the idea that the flat sheet ceramic ion exchange membrane we make for flow batteries is also has a great application in electrodialysis. Same membrane, same criteria on a number of different fronts from a performance standpoint. So we've been able to transition into that market with the blessing and support of our program manager and adapting our milestones to meet that. And then with the success of our Series Seed, we were also able to leverage that into Phase 2B of $500,000, which is, I think, a great indication both to us and to our investors who funded the company that the NSF is really trying to collaborate with industry, with investors to fund technologies that they think work well. And there again, the Phase 2B, for those of you that are familiar with it, you probably know this, but from an investor's perspective, I didn't realize how challenging it is for companies to get that extra money. And there are a couple interesting things about it. One, you have to have matching. It's 50 cents to the dollar. Two, my money didn't count because I'm too closely tied into the organization. So we were lucky enough to be oversubscribed. And three, you really have to have a valid commercialization plan. That's not just an idea, it's based on really customer engagement and showcasing that there is a market, that if the NSF provides those funds, in addition to the million they've already given us, that there's a good return. They have the same mindset that an investor would, that their money is well spent. And so I think that opportunity has really allowed us to leverage both private money and federal dollars to really accelerate the company. And it's a really exciting opportunity, I think, for industry to recognize that the NSF, from my perspective, is one of the most unique and advantageous organizations to work with. In my career over dealing with government entities of many sorts, I found the NSF to be one of the best so far.
Hey Chris, you've got relations with academia, but also with accelerators. Tell us about how that has helped you get the company moving forward.
Sure, yeah. So, obviously, as I said, the technology that we're developing was first developed at Tufts University, and we basically started the company going through a licensing process with Tufts. And they've been very supportive beyond that. The first dollar of funding the company received was from the Tufts Ideas Competition, and then they've continued to be strong partners with us since then. And over the last year, so we joined an incubator in the form of Greentown Labs, which is where we call home, along with our colleagues at VIA, and I'm sure that would come up later. But we were also privileged to join the Imagine H2O accelerator last year. And that's been a really valuable resource for us in ways that I don't know that we anticipated when we applied for it. But we've been able to leverage a lot of connections, everything from trying to sniff out hard to find information about different markets, different corners of the markets, even to looking for new talent to add to the team. So it's they play a big role. We were not sure in the beginning of like a remote accelerator, and they're based in California and we're in Massachusetts, but it's actually been I think far more valuable than we could have anticipated.
That's right. That's right. It was interesting listening to JR talk about how conservative the refining business is and how hard it is to get products to market. And I think everybody in water was going, yeah, I got that, right? We live that. So for Aqua, you guys have just launched a product. So hey, you're now commercial. How did you get through that? Been there, done that. Yeah, it's really ready for prime time with your customer. How did you get through that process so that folks feel like the risk is out of your product?
So I would say that there's a lot of people that still aren't convinced that the risk is out of the product. The big guys, municipalities, things like that, they very clearly see the value. Many people, every time we explain this to them, anyone that uses RO membranes in particular, the moment I unroll an element and they see the spacer, they say, absolutely, that will solve our problems. I can see easily how that works, but, and it's always the but. It's always the, we need to run a certain number of trials. We need to run it for a certain amount of time to really adopt it. And we're targeting licensing to major membrane manufacturers as well. And they are, if anything, even more conservative. And that's a big part of why we decided we needed to get into this, have our own rolling capabilities. We have lines in Albuquerque now to roll all sizes of elements. And it's a big part of the reason we decided to release products, is there are customers out there that are more innovative. They are more willing to take a risk because their problems are so acute that they need a solution now. And if they see it, they want it. So we really chose to go after that and to say, we're going to go out there, we're going to develop a pull in the market, and we're going to do our own sort of pilot installations that are really full-scale installations in smaller companies to have sort of the proof behind it.
Super. So a lot of times when we think about constraints of getting innovation to market, we think about capital. It's a huge constraint, no question about it. But another big constraint in this industry is talent. I think one of the panelists when we were preparing for this said, look, there are a lot of big stable water companies out there that are going to pay salaries every 2 weeks. A lot of times it's hard to attract folks into what is going to be a tough journey in taking a young company to market. But John, why don't you talk about talent? I mean, how do you find folks that want to join you for this?
Yeah, so I guess there's kind of two sides to that. One is I think we've been pretty lucky, and I think I'm extremely proud of the team we've put together. I could invest for better employees, and it wasn't all that difficult to get those people for us. I mean, we're still a fairly small team, but even on a daily basis, on like a monthly basis, I received unsolicited resumes from pretty qualified people that want to join our team. And I think part of that is because we're working on something important. You know, the reason that we go up to work every day is we think if we can develop this technology, we can have a big impact in reducing the cost and energy required to make clean water and then increase access to water. So that's been a good, you know, it has helped the supply of high quality applicants, which we've been fortunate. But on the flip side, I think we're also quite lucky. You know, there are certain skills that you need on board, especially for a member manufacturing company. You know, you need someone that knows how to do roll-to-roll manufacturing, typically in a scale that is significantly larger than anything you'd find at a university. So, you know, as a young startup with 0 or 1 employees, trying to attract someone who is maybe mid-career in a stable place in a larger company to, hey, come join this idea. You'll be employee number 1. We need you to build this out. That's not easy, right? It worked out for us. Fortunately, we have someone on our team who has experience building up a roll-to-roll commercial scale, 40-inch wide membered manufacturing system. But I think we got a little bit lucky there, to be honest.
Super. And Chris, why don't you answer that same question?
Sure, yeah. So, you know, I think we talked about this earlier, and one of the things that we've noticed as we've looked around to fill our roles is that there's a large swath of the water industry that is retiring. And, you know, this is creating problems in the industry and knowledge transfer, but we've been able to really capitalize on it by reaching out to a lot of these folks in consulting roles. And so we've used you know, really not full-time consultants, but just recently retirees that are looking to transfer knowledge and fill their time, particularly as we look into specific market verticals and we want to go meet the folks in a corner of the food market or something. And so that's been really helpful for us. It hasn't been as expensive as you would think, you know, in a consulting role, because these aren't career consultants. They're just folks that just wrapped up their careers and you know, are looking to do something interesting. So ironically, you know, we see almost a bimodal. We can have all the fresh graduates we want that want to work in a startup, but they don't have any experience. But then the other end of that risk curve is people that don't really need the stable income anymore. They just want something exciting to work on. So that's, you know, largely what we've drawn on up to this point.
Super. Super. Let's kind of just go down the line. I'd love for you guys to say who has been most helpful to you in your company's journey to getting where you are, and one either piece of advice or insight that you've drawn from the journey that you think would be worth sharing with you. Sure. We'll start.
Well, if we always touch upon investors, of course, but if you look at ways to get access to human capital or money or financing, so there's the whole governmental grants, both the European Union and Denmark, PUB in Singapore have been very supportive of what we're doing, and also supported with a lot of financing on that front. And then I think one thing we actually do different in Denmark is quite unique. So we have something called industrial PhDs, which means that you get PhDs who are actually full-time working in a company doing research, and that is co-funded by the government. So in that case, you get highly qualified people. We maybe get 3 people for the price of 1, and that's one thing that is, I think, is highly unique in Denmark. And that's something we've used a lot. And then we also try to say we cannot develop everything ourselves. So really reaching out to academia, not only in Denmark, but really where is the core competence within our technology, membranes or biotech. So we are working with, of course, Danish universities, Netherlands, Germany. We just started with MIT now in the US, Singapore, Sydney. I'm pretty sure Jeff and I, or we will talk with Jeff and the team as well. So trying not to do everything ourselves as well, how we can get access to either capital, financial, or human capital that can support our activities outside of our house.
Sure. Well, industrial PhDs free for the price of 1. I kind of like that. That's a good one.
Yeah, I think our advisors are probably the people that have helped us out the most. In some cases, really connecting us with a much broader investment community. In other cases, helping us take really deep dives in very specific water and separation applications. If you're building a membrane company that does UF, maybe NF and RO in the future, the number of applications and industries you're talking about is enormous. I mean, it's difficult to find an industry that doesn't have a water treatment need. So starting from scratch and becoming an expert in everything is incredibly difficult. So having advisors that can really speed up how fast you understand the different market verticals and what makes sense for you is critically important. In terms of one lesson we've learned, well, that's a hard one. I think inevitably in starting something new from scratch like this, you're going to be faced with a lot of really hard decisions. Sometimes they're hard because the level of uncertainty is enormous. Sometimes they're hard because it's going to force you to look back at assumptions or knowledge you thought you had and realize you're wrong and you had to change that. And I think we've come to realize that the worst thing you can do with a hard decision is to delay it. You need to be very be able to kind of zoom out and look at yourself and the company, and when there are hard decisions to be made, you need to make them and make them as fast as you reasonably can. That's probably the best thing you need to do, and a lot of times that's going to mean you spend time working on something that you shouldn't. You've now realized that an assumption you had is no longer correct, and this changes everything. But being able to make those decisions fast and work with that uncertainty is key.
That's a good point.
I think for us, again, it's a little bit different, but I'd say there's a couple of people who have been most helpful, and the first one would be our partners, for sure. And I'm giving a little bit of a hand to one of them that's sitting in the audience right here, but it's the sort of people that were sort of outside the market looking in, that saw opportunities and took it on themselves to sort of help us through it and figure out these problems, because everyone said we can't do it all on our own. It's just not possible. Even though we have found that we've had to do much of it on our own, learn it, come up with our own ways of doing it, without having those industry partners or sort of side industry partners to help with some of these other problems, it definitely would not have been possible. And then the other one I'd say is our new CEO. We've been around for about 8-9 years. We brought him on about 2 years ago, mainly just that he has so many industry contacts. Having the right people that can get you the right meetings, the right calls, they know the right guy, or they at least have, if anything, a reputation in this industry that gives them some credibility. Having someone like that on our team has been, it's the strides that we've taken in the last 2 years are probably the same, if not more, than we've done in the prior 6 or 7. So I'd say that
Craig's not in the room, right?
No, Craig's not in the room. No. Craig unfortunately couldn't make it here. But Craig, having someone that's been in the industry for that long and worked in many of these major players, he was part of GE before they were Suez. But he knew just about everyone and knew who to call and who to talk to, and also pretty much everyone knows him. So having that as a resource was a game changer for us, really.
Just as a little tidbit, Craig is also one of our advisors, so I think we now have 2 votes for.
He also sits on the board of many other small startup companies. So he's very, very interesting guy, very busy guy in the water industry. So we're very, very happy to have him.
So from my perspective, as somebody who spends most of their time, most of their day in the lab, to kind of get back to Greentown Labs, I'd say it's really been the other members of Greentown Labs, the member companies, and their many team members that have been most helpful to me, at least personally. I don't know if that's true of all of VIA, but I think in a word, it's accessibility. So little things like, I don't have a pipe wrench, I can walk across the hall and ask another company to borrow theirs. And at this stage of VIA, I think if it means not delaying an experiment by a day or 2 while the pipe wrench that you ordered is coming in, that days really matter. Another example, we were trying to image our membranes as a way to do some QC on them. We didn't even know where to start. None of us have any background in microscopy or anything like that. So we walked to the other side of the lab. There's a company there that does just that, and they were great. They were super willing to help. They took time to kind of walk through all the different options that we'd have. They imaged some of our samples for us, kind of demo how that might work. talked us through how that might be something that we can incorporate in line. And so, yeah, I think if that were to be a piece of advice, it'd be knowledge transfer happens in a lot of different ways. So maybe don't be afraid to ask someone who's not in the membrane world for help. Sometimes a fresh perspective can go a long way.
So lots of good things here that I would agree with, so I won't repeat those. I think additional ideas for consideration on this topic. There's a couple things. One of the reasons I got really excited about working with Greg, the founder, is he did a huge amount of customer outreach to find out what the problems were, not just in flow batteries, but in the membrane space itself, which has directed us every day, and making sure that we're actually trying to solve problems as opposed to commercializing his cool idea that may or may not actually work. And as an entrepreneur in residence for 2 years at UW, I saw a lot of those kind of ideas that they were cool and they were never going to be commercialized. So Greg has spent countless hours connecting with industry to try to make sure what we're doing is applicable to solving problems. The other thing that I think we've done very intentionally between Greg and I that is both a moral choice but also based on some really good data is we focused on having a very diverse team, and the diversity of our team has led us to see significant success in the challenges that a startup faces from scale up. And I would really emphasize the data that is coming out about having a diverse team shows that you end up in a better outcome as a business. I would say we're a living example of that, and really encourage diversity as part of an organization, and it works really well. And because we were intentional about it, I think we're pretty happy that the data is supporting it. But the fact that we've gone from sort of thumbnail size to commercial scale, 1,500 centimeters squared in a year, is a tremendous outcome, and I think that's 100% directed at the team that we've put together.
Sure, so there's certainly a long list of organizations and people that have helped along the way, but I'd probably be remiss if I didn't mention our state neighbors to the north. The Massachusetts ecosystem has given us so much support. So earlier we were talking about government funding and government sources, and we found the state to be one of our best partners there. Massachusetts Clean Energy Center gave us a grant that really launched the company, and then they're the affiliation with the University of Massachusetts system, which, much like some of the resources available here, give us access to labs and experts, and the state government actually pays a significant portion, even at those rates, of our costs that we incur. So we've been very happy with our relationship with the state. We're excited to look for ways to collaborate with Jeff here at the center, and that certainly showed us the value, and particularly the state level government, which I'd say speaking in the pre-call, the ratio of paperwork to dollars is significantly lower when you're dealing with local governments. Lessons learned. I think as I look back, at even just the last 18 months, I think there are, the lesson learned for me was to have sometimes a little more faith and take some bigger bets. We've been raising a seed round continuously. That means that money trickles in, sometimes in big chunks, sometimes in small chunks. And so, when you sort of sit down and plan what you want to do, there's always those conditionals of, well, if we raise X by this date, then we'll buy that piece of equipment we need. And I think, that costs us some time. You just kind of have to go for it, recognize that what produces interest in fundraising is results. And so, you've got to kind of stick your neck out there and take that chance.
Super. Well, thanks guys for that. I think the message I'm hearing sort of resonating loudly is that over and above just capital, man, it takes tremendous collaboration to be able to take early innovation into the market. And Jeff, I think what you're doing here at Fraunhofer CEI, it's hard to envision it not being a real cornerstone to helping innovation get to market faster. And what I heard you say earlier, I thought was really exciting, which is you're going to be able to test commercial scale technology here, and that's a huge benefit. So it's hard not to feel like we're in a spot that's really going to be part of the solution. So hey, we got maybe 10 minutes or so left. Let's open up to questions from the panel, please.
So guys, you're now in the trenches, taking this technology to market. But many of you are also once PhD students in science. So if now, being in the environment you're in, and if you could go back and say, recommend to a university president, for example, or a dean of a school of engineering, what you would recommend they include in either curriculum or the development of STEM PhD grads, what would be your recommendation, briefly?
What I would say, it's very important to make the teaching relevant to the industry. Maybe include the industry as well. So whether it's case studies or company placement, getting access to that throughout your studies and the curriculum will really prepare you for the real life getting out there. Is that the...
Yeah, I'm just sort of curious what briefly each of you, what your recommendation would be back to the academic establishment.
Communication. From an employee perspective, you're not going to thrive in a real company unless your communication skills are super sharp, visual, written, oral, and there's a lot of lack of that in a lot of potential employees. And if you're an entrepreneur or looking to start something, in academia, we tend to be so focused on what we're doing that before you even start doing that, step number one should be get a full understanding of what everybody else is doing. And there's just not enough for that. I mean, everybody does lick reviews, but no one actually calls up, potentially adversary professor and sees what they're doing. So
yeah, I've heard that 3 weeks in the library can save 5 minutes on the telephone.
Exactly.
Go on.
Yeah, I think that's actually kind of a tough one because it depends a lot on what aspect you're going to be doing once you actually start a company. And I think there's a part of it where if you come from a technical or engineering background, a finance portion would be very, very important. I personally took both routes. I did a engineering degree as well as a master's in business, and so sort of recognize that early on that people always say engineers and business people don't see eye to eye. They see very different parts of a company. And I decided that I was going to try to bridge that gap. And I think that, if someone wasn't willing to go get an MBA or something like that, having at least a little bit of financial training involved in a more technical background, scientific or engineering background, would be very helpful for someone that wanted to go out and start their own company.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I think just to build on that or to add, at least in my own course throughout academia, I think to do a really good job of turning out specialists. So you spend a really long time studying or investigating a very specific problem. And I've found in the last 6 months at VIA that there's just a lot I don't know. I mean, what I know really well, but I definitely wouldn't consider myself a generalist. And so I don't know if it's curriculum or if it's getting companies involved, but sort of just kind of expanding that knowledge.
How about you outside the research world?
So this is a big issue for UW and all their engineering programs and all their graduate programs, and specifically within CEI, there's a real recognition that this is a problem, that if you create a bunch of smart scientists who can't engage with the general public, it's really hard to get those ideas to commercialize. I was just looking it up trying to find it on the NSF, and I can't remember the name of it, but the NSF has this program that somebody probably knows better than I. That
NSF I-Corps program.
Yeah, the I-Corps program.
Did you guys do the I-Corps program?
Greg did, and it was wildly successful. And just taking that platform and incorporating it into a graduate program, I think would be, you don't have to create anything new. There's a tremendous program, and the value of that is being uncomfortable and talking to a potential customer and understanding what their problems are and having to force yourself into that conversation. And that's hard for anybody, specifically a subject matter expert.
Great. And last?
Sure. So I'd echo most of what the other gentlemen have said. I think that one thing that I see I didn't come out of the PhD program myself either. I had the hard learning of a 5.5-year career at Oasis, like some of the other folks present. So, but when we interact with, especially recent PhD graduates, my observation is they're becoming very good at selling their thesis. In the sense that they come in, they'll lay out for you, it's highly specialized. So at best, I have a tangential idea, and they're explaining how great it is in science. And so I've reached a point where I just respond with saying, cool, so why aren't you commercializing this? And sort of flip it on them and say, you've got to, I don't want to hear what's great about it, I want to hear what's terrible. And so one last thought that stood out, I was at NAMS in the spring, and I think for the first time I saw someone giving a poster that basically said, we looked into this and it doesn't work. And I was really struck by that tiny minority of that. And so,
which is a great
Yeah.
contribution to the community.
Exactly. So I would say, my advice to the academic community is to cultivate a little bit more of that ability to even, look critically at your own research. Because if you're not spitting it out, I want to know why. Otherwise, it seems logical, if it's as great as they say, that it should be a new startup.
Thank you guys very much.
Super. Maybe one or two more questions? Okay, Jeff, please.
So thank you for your perspective, everybody. This is really exciting. So when JR was presenting earlier about separation of molecules, you're trying to find the most valuable molecules that you can sell. Water is unfortunately not a very valuable molecule. Can you comment as to how the prevalence of many technologies in the water space, combined with the fact that we're not properly pricing water, has affected your business plans and approaches?
Question.
We may not have time for everybody to respond, but if anyone has
1 minute, Jeff.
30 seconds.
No, but you're right. If you look into one thing that we have done really well is dealing with xenobiotics. But as soon as you say municipal wastewater and membranes, OPEX, CAPEX, it's just a difficult sell. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, we see actually a pull from the industry who wants to do better, who wants to have a better CSR policy. Like, we are not contributing to the waste problems or bad uses of water in the industry, so we want to fix it, and we're willing to pay for it. Of course, not willing to pay everything for it, but there is actually, what we are feeling, a big pull from industry to actually do things right. It's not just about money anymore. In the end, having that profile will be good marketing for them, but that's really then where we see it. But it's mainly driven by the industries, not municipal driven.
Yes?
I just chime in and say, in both water and in the broader separation space, I think one of the biggest barriers to getting a new separation technology into the market is that these are all complex trains. Even a municipal wastewater train is multiple unit operations in a row, and they've evolved over decades to be optimized for what's available at the time. So if you come in with something new that isn't just a better version of one unit process, the effects of that are likely to be felt upstream, downstream, or maybe not at all unless you completely rebuild that process. And I think finding ways to get over that piloting hump where it's one thing if your technology can take a side stream and just show you're better, but for a lot of these technologies, they won't be fully realized until you rebuild processes around them, and that's a huge gap to get over.
So I think that's a really good point. There's a couple things that I would say. One, the water industry is huge, and there's no reason to go for the top of the food chain. There's lots of really exciting, innovating companies who are trying to go from the bottom up, and it's still a huge problem. So our customer is an electrodialysis stack maker, and they're finding huge opportunities to treat RO reject water from breweries. Think of a brewery in Phoenix buying city water, 35% of it gets rejected from the RO and they pay to dispose it. And so they're buying water, they're paying to dispose of it, and they're losing 35% of it. ED is a great solution to treat that and reduce it down significantly to 3% of the total. And then our value proposition is we have a drop-in replacement to a polymer-based membrane that is, 75% cheaper than what they're paying today with superior performance. So that enables their ED system to have an ROI of less than a year from the brewery. And that there's no need to try to penetrate some big organization and some big infrastructure. That will come with time. So start with that low-hanging fruit where there's real opportunity.
Okay.
Big question though, how do you get the real price of water? How do you get to the real price of water?
That sounds like a great lunchtime conversation.
That might be a great lunchtime conversation.
How many angels can sit on the head of a... It's a great question, Frank. Hey, please join me in applauding the panel.